The Modi, here's this drawing now, and many of the other images we've looked up to now deal with heterosexual love, but homosexual love was also very common in Renaissance Rome, not to mention in Florence, where a special government authority, the Ufficio della Notte, or Office of the Night, existed to combat it, and doing it the Florentine way in the 16th century meant sodomy. Also in Venice, where sodomy fell under the jurisdiction of the all-powerful Council of Ten. There it was rampant and punishable by burning at the stake, first alive, and then later, more humanely, only after the perpetrator was first beheaded. One offended diarist, writing in 1519, recorded, quote, "This wicked and pernicious vice was openly practiced in Venice without shame, and that it had become so habitual that it was more highly regarded than having to do with one's own wife." Even more shocking, this observer continued, was the fact that this wicked and abominable thing was practiced not just by youth, but also by old men. Unheard of in Venice, he elaborated, and a vice only recently having come from Rome, for the prelates and other old people were given to it, and there were passive homosexuals in the papal court. Homoerotic love is the subject of this drawing by Giulio Romano of Apollo fondling an adolescent male lover, one of two named by Ovid. And this is certainly one of the most explicit Renaissance depictions of this kind of subject. The same theme, for example, was treated by Giulio's fellow pupil in Raphael's workshop, Perino del Vaga. In this drawing, here clearly Apollo and Hyacinth, but there's nothing erotic or sexual, and Hyacinth here really looks more like a struggling toddler. The homoerotic appeal of this provocative image of Cupid carving his bow by Parmigianino is undeniable. It was painted for the artist's friend and patron, the Cavaliere Francesco Baiardo, who owned a number of works having erotic and homoerotic subjects. Portrayed not as a mischievous child, but rather as a fleshy adolescent, Parmigianino's Cupid gazes seductively over his shoulder at the privileged viewer, to whom he presents his shapely and ample rear end. He wields between his thighs a large erect knife. Oops. Here's the knife. A seemingly mundane object that carried overt and specifically phallic connotations in the burlesque humor and imagery of the day. Another homoerotic metaphor drawn from the kitchen cabinet was the frying pan, which the painter Bronzino, who was also a gifted poet, eroticized and extolled in a veiled ode to sodomy. He talked about how if you put eels in a frying pan, they lie there limp, but when you turn up the heat under the frying pan, suddenly the eels spring to life, and I think you got it. Other poets accorded erotic alter egos to a myriad of suggestively shaped fruits and vegetables of the garden. Do I need to point them out? Here's one. And here the fig was a particular favorite. One such literary wit was the poet and curial secretary Francesco Berni, a key figure, I think, for grasping the essence of the comic, satiric, burlesque spirit that informs much of the more profane, bawdy, and erotic imagery of the Renaissance. His poetic formulation of the paradoxical encomium, excessive praise of the exceedingly banal, a rhetorical mode that had its origins in antiquity. Berni's formulation of this paradoxical encomium profoundly influenced burlesque poetry. His encomium to his urinal, certainly the most lowly of objects, is a quintessential demonstration of this burlesque poetic mode. If many of his fellow poets extolled the fig, emblem of female pleasures, as the most perfect fruit, in a sort of erotic paragone or Judgment of Paris, the 16th century poet Francesco Molza announced that the fig was to be prized above rival peaches and apples. Berni instead championed as the most sublime creation the peach, a stand-in for the male buttocks, and, he wryly noted, the favorite fruit of prelates. Quote, "O fruit, blessed above all others, good before, in the middle, and after the meal, good before and perfect behind." This has to be that kind of peach. In a letter to absent friends, the same Berni invokes an eroticized Eden in which the entire garden and everything growing in it alludes to carnal and expressly homoerotic pleasures. Quote, "May God grant you his blessing in giving you for your garden a big thing with a pitchfork as long as a beam between your legs, and may you have beans and pods and peaches and carrots all year round in the way I desire for my small garden. And he actually was accused of sodomy. Unless we wrongly conclude that such erotic double entendres would have been apprehended only by learned literati, it must be remembered that instruction to the population at large existed in the form of popular music. I don't know if I can read this one without laughing, but a well-known Florentine carnival song, Canto dei Cardoni, rhapsodizes about the cardoon. And as you hear it, I'm sure you'll know to what part of the male anatomy it's oh so unsubtly referring to. Ladies, we are master growers of cardoons, which in our gardens grow big and good. We shall give you this recipe of ours, besides which we have no greater gift to give. The cardoon should be in size a span or a little more, for nature cannot digest anything so big and hard, even though we always like big mouthfuls. Well, so much for the cardoon.